Today's show is brought to you by me, for you, all the time. I will be speaking with my good old friend, Geoff Sobelle. I will talk to Geoff Sobelle. That's right. I did that because he used to have an answering machine that was that greeting. Leave a message for Geoff. And I missed that. So I wanted to try and recreate it here for posterity. Geoff Sobelle is, I believe, to be one of the greatest actors in our star system. And I know that's a large claim, but I stand fully behind that. You can take me to claims court and Judge Wapner will rule in my favor. That is correct. I've been privileged to see almost all of his repertoire of shows with other people and solo, and they're all absolutely fantastic. So you should make that your mission, high priority, to see them. That should be your life's work, is to go see Geoff perform. From his work with Pig Iron Theater to Rainpan 43 to his solo work, out of sight, out of this world. So good. And I've been fortunate, again, to see him over these past 20-some years. Almost 20 years we've known each other. Being some meandering animals we are, and catching him in various pockets, performing his shows over the years. It's great. Geoff has an uber presence and is hilarious. He is more than once left me in hysterics. Rib splitting. You know that? Have you had that? I hope everyone can experience that in their lifetime. To laugh so hard that it feels like you broke a bone in your body. That's special. That's like next level laughter. So I hope that you have that experience. I wish that upon you. I'm excited to share him with you here. And for all you Yankees out there, this goes out to you. Let's hang 10 with Mr. Geoff Sobelle.
All my friends till the very end, thank you for the fun and the play. Until next time, I hope you all do fine. Live to see another day. My pals and my peers, throughout all the years, you've done so much.
Because we're live. We're live right now. It's funny how people say we're live is filmed before a live studio audience. It's good that it's not a dead studio audience. They just fill the audience with corpses and then have Oprah, Maury Povich, what's that? Sally, whatever.
Sally Ann Kavanaugh.
Yeah, there we go. They just come out. Yeah, no one's clapping. No one's moving. So it's good we don't have that. We don't have a live studio audience. We have me and you, mano y mano.
Yeah,
right
in
here.
mono.
In mono, with mono. I've been so tired.
That's because it's the kissing disease, and that's all I've been doing the whole pandemic long.
Yeah, I said, actually, it's funny. I said we weren't going to talk about any of the pandemic, and we start with it in the first 15 seconds. I've actually had a kissing booth set up the past year to make a little extra money, but I've not been doing well, so I had to go on an unemployment. Next, there'll be a kombucha stand. I actually thought about yesterday getting my daughter to set up a lemonade stand but serve kombucha, but under the premise of me making money off of it.
Oh, I think that's brilliant.
and
You can
using
do
her.
that.
Yeah, and just using her to just be like, oh, isn't that sweet little girl is selling kombucha?
Yeah, and also maybe using her to like make all of the kombucha and maybe starting like a larger, business where other children can also make kombucha, at night
I
with
think
their
that,
little fingers.
yeah, with their little fingers and like get a bunch of big machinery and they can start doing that. It's
Yeah.
wow, already 30 seconds in and we're PC, PU.
P Diddy.
P Diddy. Yeah. Where are you right now?
Man, I'm trying to get my Zoom to work. Is where I am. It's all things are actually literally messed up, but I think it's working now. I'm in.
It looks good.
I'm in
It
a
looks
little.
it
Town.
looks zippy.
It looks good, right? It's gonna look great.
Zoom.
On
Instead of like this whole thing, we just had something called Zip, and that would have been nicer, I think.
Then Zoom.
Yeah, just call Zip.
I was thinking Zap.
Zap would be fine. Yeah, that'd be.
Or all three.
Yeah, Zap, Zoom. Yeah. Well, anyway, that'll be a startup for someone.
Why Zip instead of Zoom?
Just if you really have to talk to someone quickly. Zoom is more for visuals, and Zip could be.
I gotta zip you. Zoom.
Yeah,
you.
it actually sounds like you're maybe like not letting them talk.
I'm gonna zip you.
Zip it up.
Zip it. Zip. What do you think about Zip?
Zum.
Something I do want to talk about. Zip. I'm in a little town called Stuyvesant, New York.
Yeah.
And it's a very small town that is right, literally on the Hudson River. There's a post office. There's a Mexican restaurant called Pico de Gallo, and that's it. Then everything else, there's some farms. It's rural, so it's a lot rural. It's rural, raggy. There's a lot of farms, and yeah.
What kind of farms do they have up there?
I was afraid you were going to ask me that. I don't know. I see a lot of corn.
You should have been afraid of that question.
I know. I should have seen that coming.
Corn, like the veggie burgers. Corn, fields of corn.
Fields of corn. Yeah, like
which is not our sponsor for the show.
Corn. But
corn.
But while we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Corn. Great for the teeth, great for the bones, great for the smile. And if you're listening to Bradford Trojan, hopefully you're eating a big old dish of corn.
Creamed
corn.
Creamed corn.
Anyway, now a word from our sponsor.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of corn, but I actually think I'm not sure. I'm like the least rural person. So what do I know? But I feel like maybe corn's not like hard to grow or something like that. I mean, it looks hard.
Yeah.
But maybe it grows through all kinds of. It's just a lot of corn up here.
Yes.
So, and I guess this country eats a lot of corn. So it maybe makes sense. Anyway, sadly, there's also some cows, but there's nothing like crazy. There's like one place that looks a little sad. A lot of sad-looking cows.
Yeah. But that area is beautiful. I mean, I've been up in that area, and not right where you are, but it's pretty beautiful.
Yeah, I just meant sad because they're heading to the abattoir.
Yeah.
But no, it's super beautiful. It's very, very beautiful.
Yeah.
And I should say that we, Sophie and I, were living in Brooklyn for the last little while. But when I say even that, really we were that was our home base. Mm-hmm. And we were touring a lot. So we were, I felt like I was seeing Penn Station more than I was seeing. That was like the building I saw the most of. So New York was kind of like a place to be. Yeah. I would not have necessarily said that it was home yet. And we were supposed to be on tour when the pandemic hit. Sorry to talk about it, but but it's fact. I mean, that's what happened.
The blip. Yeah.
That's the thing. So when like the portcullis fell down, it just meant that like I had sublet our place for the next like many months, but we had just figured out this church in upstate New York with a musician. So we're kind of like splitting it with this other family. And we got a hold of it as a place to make work and to make stuff. And but then we've been living here because we kind of didn't have another place to go. So we were super, super lucky. And then now we're just staying here.
Yeah. What a great place to stay. I mean, it's everything you've told me before when I've spoken with you the past year. It sounds like just so nice, and what a great, and people departing from cities and getting out into some of these wide open spaces. Sounds like the right thing.
Yeah.
Feels really good. It's great. I'm glad you're there. And so this is a far departure from where you originally were from, which is the West Coast.
Mm-hmm. I'm from Los Angeles originally.
Yeah. Original. You're an OG in the OC.
Not the OC. I'm from Orange County.
SoCal? No. SoCal.
I'm from Southern California, of which Orange County is a part. But that's not where I was from. But yeah, so I was from Los Angeles, and then
you just burst my bubble there.
Sorry, I really did.
You plopped it.
But I'm from LA, and then most of my life, though, like my adult life, has all been the East Coast.
Yeah,
Philly, where I met you.
Yeah,
when you were at Bradford Trojan Traffic Jam, and working there with Pig Iron. That's who brought me to Philly.
Yeah,
and then really from Philly to New York. So there's just been a lot of like traveling around. But those were the spots. Philly.
Yeah, exactly. So you were traveling a lot. People will never know.
Home. I was talking about home.
Yeah.
Home was LA, Philly, New York, with a lot of traveling in all of, I'm a theater artist. So that's what I do for my bread and butter and jam. And so that means that a lot of traveling.
Yeah. You might be the most traveled person that I know.
Really?
I do. I think so. I was thinking about this earlier in that I know a lot of artists, musicians, actors, but I think you are the one that I know that has been on the road the longest. Yeah, I think so. Honestly,
you don't hang out with a lot of pilots, do you?
No pilots. So no pilots. I'm sure they'd overtake your travel time. Mm-hmm. But you've clocked in a lot of geographic zones, right? Like
yes.
And for you, which is maybe different from other musicians I know touring. You go to a place and you really like hunker down for a bit and either work on a show or you travel and bring that show there. But all the while, it's usually like, so people know who aren't familiar in the theater world, is that there's a lot of setup, there's a lot of rehearsal time and tech time, and then the run of the show.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm remembering like when we first met with Lucia.
Yes. Tell me, how did we meet?
Well,
I don't remember.
Okay, you had just come out of a coma, and Donna was cheating on Greg, and I was like, okay, no. So we met.
Days of our lives.
we met in Philadelphia. Okay, I'll tell you exactly how we met, because I was dating your unofficial cousin.
Yes.
Your cousin who's not your blood cousin.
Right.
The amazing, fantastic Juliana Zinkel.
Illustrious, yes.
And
amazing.
So Julie was like, "Hey, you gotta come see my cousin Bradford play music one night." And I don't know why, I was just like, okay. I mean, I was always, of course I was going to go. I was excited to go, but I guess when someone's kind of like, "Hey, you got to see my cousin." I don't know what I thought. I was like,
well, cousins usually not that good.
Yeah. Like, would you like them if they weren't your cousin? So I guess I imagined like, I don't know, like it would be only the two of us there, and it would be sort of like a I don't know, like a sad gig at like the
Yeah.
Olive Garden, and you were playing in front of the Salad Garden. I don't know what it was.
Doing like some like Jimmy Buffett cover or something.
Jimmy Buffett by the buffet.
Buffet. Jimmy Buffett.
Jimmy Buffet. But instead, oh man, we went. It was at the Khyber Pass,
Yeah.
not the actual Khyber Pass. That would come later. But we went to the Khyber Pass in Philly, and on 2nd Street, on 2 Street, and that was like the best show I think I've ever seen in my life, Brad. It was.
Jeez.
Well, no, I don't mean you. I meant the opening act. Who was that guy, Jimmy Buffet? No, you. It was so amazing because I don't know what I expected, but actually it was like there you were. You were in these days. I don't know if of course you remember this, but you were wearing a suit. Mm-hmm. There was a little bit of like Elvis Costello going on. Mm-hmm. Great rock and roll songs, like just awesome. But it was the energy and it was the look in your eye. And the fact that you were then like by the end kicking things over, like with such a, like this maniacal grin, and you went bonkers. And it was sort of, it wasn't like angry punk. It was like just the goofiest, but still really rock and roll. You were like kicking speakers over and chairs over and your guitar stand. And then you like fell out the back door of the Khyber Pass, like onto 2nd Street. It was so great with the best grin, just that Bradford Trojan giant maniacal grin that I fell in. It was love at first sight. And I was like, then pissed because I was like, Julie, why didn't you take me to see him on the first 5 minutes of meeting you?
Oh man,
Wasted so much time.
It would have just been at my apartment. Like, why didn't you take me right away while I'm brushing my teeth and knocking over the toilet and breaking?
Okay, so now I got to tell this story. Now I got to tell this story because I'm remembering this actually, like it's a live memory, which was that by chance at the time, the theater company I was working with, Pig Iron in Philly, who's an awesome theater company, and has always had this. They're a very musical bunch, and I will not include myself in that. I mean, I would beg to differ, so I'll get to that. But all right, well, you can beg all you want, but I'll differ. But they're super musical, and they were continuing their path into musical discovery, and they were wanting to do something that. I guess they kept talking about indie rock, but I don't know if that was ultimately what they were really after. They just wanted something that was a little more rock and roll than they had ever done in the past. But then they were also wanting to explore mental illness, and the idea was
hand in hand,
which was like Bradford Trojan. But it was like, and ultimately the show was called the Lucia Joyce Cabaret. He's dead and so is Paris. Is that what it was called?
James
Joyce is dead and so is Paris. Mm-hmm. The Lucia Joyce Cabaret. So it was about James Joyce's daughter. Mm-hmm. And in a way, it was ultimately about like bad parenting, I guess. But it was about, I don't know. It was about a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And we don't need to go into the whole story of Lucia Joyce, but that's a good little hyperlink. Y'all should read about Lucia Joyce.
Hyperlink. Yep.
But what happened was Pig Iron was like, who do we know in Philly that can fucking rock? There's like a real singer, because they knew a lot of musical people, but I don't think they really were tapped into, like the music scene, like rock and roll and actual like bands and stuff like that. And I didn't, but when I saw you, I was like, oh my God, we have to see if Bradford would audition for them. And I kind of had this cold feet because I was like, oh man, what if I love this, but they don't? Like, what if I'm the weird one? Yeah. And so I remember we set up the whole thing, and you came with your whole band to the parlor, which is a converted funeral parlor. Yes. And it still is, but it's a dance venue. So it's not like bands go there all the time. So it's basically just a big empty room with a nice dance floor, and they used to embalm bodies.
Coming back to the live studio audience.
Yeah, exactly. And you set up in what they call the big room, which is not that big of a room.
Yeah.
And you guys set up. I mean, it took a while because it was like the whole thing. And I remember Pig Iron being like, well, this takes a little while for them to set up, but they'd never really been hanging with a rock band before. They were used to people just kind of coming in.
Yeah.
But the whole thing was sort of set up. It was organized, drummer, all the musicians. And then and everything was all set, but there was one problem, which was that there was no XLR cable for a mic. Or there was no mic. Or I think maybe you were like, did you guys bring a mic? And they were like, no. Did you? And maybe there was like this sad thing of like, we are holding auditions and we didn't bring any equipment, or I don't know what happened. But it was basically like, well, what do we do? Yeah. And you, again, classic Brad Trojan with a big smile. You're like, it's really not a problem, guys. We're just going to play and I'll just be really close to you so you can hear the lyrics.
Yes.
And so the band played with this like wall of sound, like awesome rock and roll music. And you were playing your songs. And then you, so that we could hear you, like got up really close. But when I say really close, you were within like inches of our face because there was no prayer that we would hear you. And even then, I doubt we could really hear you, but it was so fantastic. And it was so positive. Oh my God, those songs it was so great. And so it was of course meant to be. Yeah. And so then they hired you immediately, and then you were Samuel Beckett.
Yeah, the crazy man playing Samuel Beckett.
That's right.
I actually forgot about that story. I can't believe it. That's awesome. You remembered it. Yeah,
So
I
good.
remember it now. Yeah, it was totally like. And it was a blast. It was a blast for me to come in and, then also coming back. I know there was a couple auditions, and there were some other musicians that I met from Philly, and eventually, the team formed, the backing band, and then
Ben Edwards.
Ben Edwards, Amy Pickard, the other guy who was before
Andrew Nelson.
Well, no, it was before Andrew Nelson. Andrew Nelson was awesome, but it was the guy Eric before Andrew.
Oh yes,
that kind of nutty nutball who was not a team player.
I don't think I ever. No, he wasn't. I don't think I ever saw him again.
No, he was like.
I know he follows this podcast, but other than that, I don't. Yeah, not sure about that guy.
Is that him in your basement behind you?
I think it is.
With a knife? Actually, he has an XLR cable right behind you.
He's about to strangle you with it. Oh my God.
Yeah. I remember he was the first here, and then Andrew took over, and it was like, oh, Andrew was awesome. That was so good. The whole great team, and just getting to, for me, that was like, that's a highlight memory. That's full on. In the memory banks of that's gaining interest as we speak because it is so fun what we got to do and going to Princeton. That's where you and I really got to bond and be buddies and work on Lucia and work on the show and with Pig Iron full force and like just being immersed in this this new way of life, basically, that I hadn't been exposed to. It was the first time I did yoga and,
Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, my God, that's right. And then you became, of everybody, then you were the actual, like, yogi.
Yeah, years later.
Yeah, that was like the moment. But, and that's really what we should talk about. But just to bring it back for a sec, what I wanted to say was that the way that we did that gig at Princeton in residence, that because we're talking about traveling a lot and touring a lot and stuff like that. That was a kind of unusual situation. Like I don't remember exactly how long we were there, but maybe like 6 or 8 weeks. It was
long. Yeah,
it was long. It might have been 2 months because it probably was a full semester.
I think it was 2 months. Yeah,
and I don't think we dealt with this, but some of the members were also teaching.
Yes,
and so there was a kind of like. Embedded quality, and that is something that I really love about that we can do in the theater at times. It's not always that way. Sometimes it really is just dropping in, doing the show and bouncing. But like that one, like we really did interface with students. Like there were students who were a part of that whole project. Yeah. And they were like, for better or for worse, actually, because I remember the Princeton student body not always being like the most game, but whatever, it was fine.
Yeah.
But in a way, that is a really cool way of traveling, because you go to a place and what you make is so much in response to the place in which you are in. And, it's a very dynamic way of making stuff, I feel like. And then, we had so many adventures. Like, I remember our romp in the snow. You got deathly ill.
I did, yeah. I got like a terrible flu. We played laser tag. I remember
we played laser tag. That was amazing. We became completely obsessed with cayenne maple syrup and lemon. Remember that?
Yes.
And maca. You introduced me to maca powder, and I think I got addicted to maca powder.
Whoa.
We would have maca powder and the lemon maple cayenne thing before every show.
Yeah.
We did like a ceremony.
Yes.
I spent like all of my money on fucking maple syrup. That's just expensive. We go to Wild Oats and just like get a bunch of organic maple syrup. And then we laughed our asses off. And it was where I became, for the very first time, you educated me about, and then the hollow earth theory, coast to coast.
Yes.
I mean,
that's where I was really coming into that world of like, and I want to just say this because this has come up in the past shows, fun conspiracy theories, fun conspiracy, enjoyable, fun,
yes,
silly.
no, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, master. Well, I just want to say that, around that time when you had me breaking into those pharmaceutical companies and and trying to take all the implants out of your brain with tweezers, and I enjoyed that too.
It was fun. It was light.
Well, I want to just say that it was, for me, who was an English major, and I've been like a literary head for a long time, that reading, because I was like, you were like, you got to read it. You got to read it. You got to read this stuff. Yeah. And I was like,
literally, okay, I watched you read. I sat and watched you for hours.
The blood drain out of my face, where I got so angry. I mean, I was so pissed off because it's unreadable. It's just not actually readable.
It's true.
The logic.
And it's like 500 pages worth.
But then I remember we had this conversation about the hollow earth theory, where it was like everything I would try to say to try to argue that there's no way that the earth is hollow. You had a retort. There was a way that you could come back. Logic be damned, or not. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. And at the time, then I was finally just like, Brad, do you actually believe that the earth is hollow? And you kind of looked at me and you kind of just shrugged your shoulders like, I don't know, verdict's out. And then you're like, but and you lead in, you're like, but it's kind of more fun to think it is, isn't it? And I was like, oh, I get this. I see. And I realized there was a thing, which was that that there was an art to a beautiful conspiracy theory, actually. Yeah. And that it was there was something to it that was pretty fun and pretty fantastic. That was somewhere that wasn't sci-fi, and it's not. It's its own realm. And I think you can get lost in a very sad way.
Yes.
And maybe we've seen a lot of that even this year. Yeah. But there's another aspect to it too, which is it's a kind of poetry, a strange kind of living poetry, and it does mix with technology and the paranormal. And I was just thinking about those, like, what are those called when you catch alien whispers on like FM radio stations or something like that? They were like,
like coming through actual radio, like
little murmurings. Do you remember?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. I forget what it's called, but
MMVs or something like that. They had like some abbreviation.
Yes.
And I remember listening to Coast with you, like literally while driving coast to coast.
Yeah.
Like in the middle of the night. And it was beautiful. It was like a ghost story. And you're hearing these like little voices coming through the FM radio.
Yeah.
But we actually were hearing voices coming through the FM radio. I don't know. It was pretty fantastic.
I love it, and what you say, how it's like poetry. And again, just stepping back, people step back 20 years. This is where things were in that world. And it almost felt like, to me, creative thinking, it was just this way of like it was like an imagination, and just going out into that. And you said sci-fi, but a little sci-fi, fantasy. And I also realized recently that it was almost a way of like, just a extension of my punk rock, up authority kind of thing, where it's like, I'm not believing the mainstream. I'm on the earth's hollow, and just like anything you were told is like, don't tell me what to think. And so there's that kind of feeling of like, counter culture, like revolution-ish thinking with it.
Yeah. And I just want to say too, I feel like, I wonder if it echoes, it's funny you say that about the punk rock and the FU and I think you had a legitimate and founded distrust of authority. Yeah. And whether that was like police or institutions or family or what, you were like, how old were you? You were like 23.
I was 23 years old. Yeah.
And you know,
right on schedule.
You were right on schedule. And I do remember us, I think this is a good story too, is like, we're on Highway 5. We're driving to Arizona for the first time from San Francisco.
Yeah.
And we're on Highway 5, black as night. We're just like driving in the dark black night. Mm-hmm. And not black as night, just a black night. Yeah. Like there was that road, you only are lit by headlights. And it's, and we're deep in conversation about, I think we were talking about mental illness, and we're getting into it about family and about, when the ground is not totally firm under our feet. And I don't know, just a very tender conversation, subtle conversation. We're sharing a lot. And all of a sudden, I become acutely aware of a car just to our right, with no lights on.
Like, I think I was talking about reptilians too, to be honest.
Were you?
I was. Yeah. Honestly, I remember we were like definitely in a zone there, but it was probably all over the place. But it was one of the things. So anyway, sorry. You see?
No, I mean, I'm sure we were. And then all of a sudden, that car, they notice.
Yeah.
And they suddenly like slow down. So they come right behind the car. Mm-hmm. Then they turn their headlights on. Like, what the fuck? Then they turn the lights on, the red and blue lights. And we get pulled over, like the weirdest way I've ever been pulled over. And and there's no one around, no one around. We pull over, he's like car, that sound of the tires on the gravel in the like middle of nowhere. And we pull over, and then I remember them going like, cause they were like on their CB or whatever it is, pull over. And I still remember this. They go, pull all the way over. I was like, what does that mean?
Go off the edge of the bridge. Just go all the way.
Flip the car. So we go over a little more. Then the guy, guy comes up to your side. I'm driving. Goes up to the passenger side. And I'm like, oh, this isn't good. And he knocks on the window. You roll down the window. And I'm like, is there a problem, officer? Was I speeding? I think I was speeding. I was like, I just wanted to. And he put his hand out to say to me, like, this isn't about you. And he says to you, license and registration.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm the driver. I can give you my license and insurance. And again, puts his hand out and he's like, I need your driver's license. And you were like, with shaky hand, you give him your driver's license, and like he goes back to run your license, and we're looking at each other like, what the fuck? And I didn't have a good answer for you, man. When that happened, like, why would he need your shit?
Yeah.
And maybe even asked you a few questions or something like that, like what your name was. I don't remember, but it just was weird. Yeah. So he comes up and he's like, do you know why I pulled you over? And again, I was like, because I'm speeding. I'm doing anything.
It's me.
It's
me.
It's
a bad little boy.
I'm super drunk. I'm driving. And he goes, you were driving without a seatbelt.
Yeah.
And you were like, oh, no, I got a seatbelt on. And you did. You had a seatbelt on. You're like, but I had pulled off the shoulder strap because I needed to get a tape cassette. Because you had pulled, you had like reached around to get granddaddy out of the tape cassettes or whatever.
Right.
And he gives you the summons or the ticket citation. He says, that's how the drummer lost his arm from Def Leppard. Be really careful out there. And it was a $17 ticket.
It was ridiculous. Here's the other weird part of this is that I remember.
So weird.
I never did anything with it, and I even called. I remember doing this. I remember saving it, calling it, and everything, and there was never a record of anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Seriously, nothing. It was really weird.
We were convinced he had put a bunch of opium in the tailpipe or whatever he had done,
and mark the car, and then have someone pick it up on the East Coast when they arrive.
It seems so shady, but
it was weird.
What do you think that was about?
I don't know, man. It's strange. Yeah, I don't know what it was about. It was weird. It was weird times.
Man.
But I loved being able to. That was early Coast to Coast days for me. And Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. Art Bell was still doing it. And, I've said this before, but that's the reason I say I moved out west, because it's on earlier out here, where back east I'd have to, be up till 3 a.m. listening to it. But come out to Tucson, you get it at a nice early hour. But yeah, that was some good times. And so coming back around to the Lucia show, we were in Princeton, and then from that point, that kind of marked some of my time that I spent with Pig Iron. I got to join for some more shows, which was really fun. It was great. I mean, you had been in Pig Iron Theater for a while at that point, right? I mean, that was 2003. You guys how did you all form?
Well, I wasn't with them in their formational days, but the company formed out of Swarthmore College, which is just outside of Philly, and the founding members, who included Dido Van Ragersburg and Dan Rothenberg and Quinn Bordell and Sully Holum, they were those four plus a bunch of others. And I hope I'm getting this right. It'd be kind of embarrassing if I didn't. But I think that their very first thing that they ever worked on, before they were really Pig Iron, was...
well, you know what happens when you get embarrassed. You get an ember ass.
Oh my God.
That was on the spot for you all out there in podcast land. That was just fresh for you.
That was freshly minted. Okay, so Pig Iron formed with a show called The Odyssey that was Homer's Odyssey, and they brought it to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which is a giant theater festival, the biggest of its kind. And that was the company literally formed in order to do international touring. Yeah. That was how they saw themselves. That's what they wanted to do. They didn't see themselves as a company who would make work that would only be in Philly or be in any one American city. They really believed in a kind of touring and as well a kind of international exchange of some kind. And to that end, they were very young. They were still in college at that time. And when they left, a number of them, not all of them, but Dan and Quinn, they went to the Lecoq School, which is a physical theater school in Paris.
Yeah.
École Jacques Lecoq.
Yes.
And I met them there. So Pig Iron had kind of already formed, but it would find its real bones in the next couple years. And out of the Lecoq School, they really kind of formed the next the company that would be the company for the next really big chapter of the company's life, and that then included Emmanuel Delpech and Cassie Friend, James Sugg, who wasn't at Lecoq, but I don't need to get into all of it, but he joined at that time, and then a little later Sarah Sanford and I joined.
Okay.
And so, but it was enough later that there was, I think there was a good 5 years under that company's belt before Sarah and I joined.
Yeah.
And we officially joined in like 2000, 2001. And so actually, I hadn't been with the company that long.
I remember
when we
them,
did Lucia.
I remember them officially making Sarah a part of the ensemble.
That's true. That's true.
But she was already working and doing stuff with.
Yes. Yeah. She and I had already made stuff with them, but it took, we didn't become like company members right away. But that's true. So I hadn't really been with them that long, really, when we did the Lucia show. It was probably like the third or fourth thing I made with them.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Oh man, that was and that was the first exposure. Being in that was my first exposure to avant-garde theater, I guess, for lack of a better. I don't know if you have a better term for that. What you would say, physical theater. What would you say?
Yeah.
What would you call it?
Nowadays, people the word devised is really thrown around a lot.
Devised. Okay.
Yeah, which just means that you're not working from a script, I think. Mm-hmm. I don't really love that word but I guess, I don't know. I just have never used that. Like, it's original because it's not, we're not going off a script. It's dependent on the people who are in the room.
Yeah.
It is physical theater. Again, all of these are difficult, tricky words,
Yeah.
Frankly, I just think of it as theater. But in this country, especially, theater tends to be a script-based thing, and it's people taking, having a writer, and then there's a writer, and the writer writes the script. There was a writer on that, but the writer was not like Deb Stein, but the writer wasn't the center of the show. The writer is essential, but no more essential, for instance, than a lighting designer or any of the other actors. But basically, it's based on these large improvisations, and we would improvise, we would create, we would write music. I think, I would say at the center of that Lucia show was really music, and not just the song, but the performance of music. Yeah. So that there's something theatrical about the act of playing music on stage, and I think why they were so keen on doing something about kind of rock and roll was because of this like kind of altered states that like you get to this emotional expression that makes sense in a musical performance, that doesn't make sense anywhere else. And thinking about like how, I don't know, I think there was a kind of equation that was made to a state of like, not necessarily mental illness, but a kind of just of like emotional expressivity that like regular life, regular society, regular norms can't contain. If you saw someone behaving the way they behave on stage in a subway, you would look the other way and put your head down and be like, okay, weirdo.
Right. Right.
And actually that kind of willful look the other way, I think is important because it's a kind of like, the way that society wants to look the other way about mental illness. That mental illness is scary to society at large. Society at large does not want to deal. And I remember we like read the Michel Foucault book about like when they would literally back in medieval times, they would load anybody who had probably learning disabilities straight up to somebody who was like absolutely unresponsive. I mean, in those days they weren't pathologizing, but they were probably just thinking they were demons. Anyway, everybody got loaded onto a boat and they were sent off into the great unknown. And that's the ship of fools. That was where the term came from. But it's interesting. Like you draw a line to trying to get people off the streets. I don't know. It doesn't feel that crazy different, like putting people away. Anyway, that show brought up a lot of like really interesting themes and politics about like, well, who decides the threshold of what is quote unquote normal behavior? and what's permissible. And especially when you get into something like performance or music, like how far is too far? And that, I think the show was trying to ask those questions.
Yeah. Yeah. And for people that weren't there, it was an immersive experience. The audience was a part of it. You were in the institution. You were with the actors interacting with you.
Yeah,
you were the doctor that was
that wasn't the doctor. I mean, boy, if I think about this now, like I think that show is really problematic. Now I think that at the time it was too, but there is a history of this kind of performance, like the Marat Saad is like the name of a show where you would be ushered into a kind of mental asylum or institution, and the members of the institution were performing a play for you, and that's what this was too. But it's funny, I think these days there is something about authenticity that I just wonder if the company could really do that these days. I just feel like even as a member of that company, I feel like we would probably say, like, I don't feel that comfortable about performing someone who is suffering from mental illness. Like,
yeah.
It's hard to, I feel a little differently about that than I did at the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, things have changed a lot in 20 years, and I mean, they've changed in such that what certain things we thought were acceptable, might not be now, and maybe weren't then.
Yeah,
it's interesting. But all that part aside, it was a glorious time being with everybody, like that fun that was had through the company. So for me, that was like just a blast. It was a whole new experience. I mean, I know you had already been in that world and been, I mean, that was your whole studies. That was your life, moving through and becoming, going deeper and deeper and immersing in the theater. So, like I said before, coming around to you had been then touring. You started to do basically, I don't know, world tour, but you were going to Europe often, through the States, and having these residencies, right?
Yeah.
These places. And so what was your experience now, just like looking back on that? Because to me, it's like, that's what a glamorous, it's glitzy. It's not like, the Hollywood world, but it feels glamorous. You're just out. And,
yeah. Oh, it's pretty fantastic. Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, it's not glamorous because, no, but I would say it's definitely romantic. And there's nothing I would never have traded those years. We were, and it would change. I would say in the last 20 years, certain places with certain companies or certain things become kind of in vogue, or not in vogue, but I found myself with Pig Iron, we were going back and forth to Poland a lot. So I got to see a lot of Poland, which was really fantastic.
Yes. Yeah.
And then there was a period where I was in London a lot, or then there was a period where I was in Australia a whole bunch. And then it would always be periodically always going back to this Edinburgh festival, which is really just so fun and so fantastic. It's not glamorous because it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of it's not it's not great necessarily conditions, but no, but I mean, it's not squalid. It's not
you're not rolling crappy in your own filth.
No, but nor are you treated like a movie star or something like that. Yeah. It's definitely not. It's a lot more bohemian.
Yes.
But what is really cool is whenever it's possible, you would travel, as best as you could, you would, because the company would always have to, or the festival or whoever it is, they have to pay for your ticket from the States to said destination and then back. But then once you're there, you could always say, listen, can you delay my flight a couple of days or something like that? And it meant that you could explore places that you would normally never explore. Yeah. And that was super cool. That was really, really, really fun. So yeah, I had a lot of tremendous adventures. And I got to say, like, for me, the cool thing is going to towns that, like, if I were to go to Poland as a tourist or something, I would probably go to Krakow, and like, it's the most, or maybe Warsaw, and they're like the places you would know, and they're super beautiful. But we played those places, but we also went to like Łódź and Kalisz, and I don't know, like some random spots, random to me. I mean, if you're from there, they're not, but that are not exactly like destinations in a touristical kind of way. And that was really fun. That was really quite cool.
Was there a show, just looking back on that era, you know, I'm kind of not like getting to your I would say solo years, but like breaking away from the ensemble from Pig Iron, was there anything that was kind of your favorite, or that you really have?
Of the shows?
Yeah, shows.
Well, I mean, for a long time, my friend Trey and I toured this clown show called All Wear Bowlers. Yeah. And that was
amazing. That show. Was it's really an amazing
fun.
Show. I've seen it a few times.
And part of it was, that was really fun because of just for one, it was like a show that could work just about everywhere, and it was for the most part really outside language. It was really like a true physical comedy kind of show, but then it had these darker, more poignant moments, and it, for whatever reason, that thing just, it really worked, and it felt great to perform that, because you, especially at festivals, you would meet people and you didn't share a language, but they would see it, and we would see their shows, and we couldn't really have a conversation, but we all like loved each other's work, and you would have a beer after or whatever, and like really just get on like a house on fire, even though you didn't know how, you couldn't say anything to each other, really, you know. That was super funny and fun. That was really fun. I do have to say, like, I adored touring with Pig Iron, because they're such funny people, and we would always, with Pig Iron, we would always do something like teach or do some kind of workshop. Yeah. And then that meant that all of those people who came to the workshop, like, also somehow came and saw the show. And I got to credit really like Dito. Like Dito just alone is he's so warm. Yes. That like people would just fall in love with the company. Yeah. Really, they had just fallen in love with Dito. And because of that, it was like everywhere we went, it was like so endearing, I guess. Or I don't know. That was really fun. Yeah. So I have really fond memories of all of that. I think at the time I was just always tired. You know, it was like, it's pretty exhausting. But yeah, no, it was great.
It's great. Funny you say tired, because being around you at that time, you know, when I had more time kind of around you in early mid 2000s, when I was around you, it was like, talk about the zip zam zoom. I mean, it was like, it's like, you know, eating and brushing your teeth at the same time. And doing a multiverse tasking. Yeah. Doing one thing in this timeline, and then another one in this one, and this one. And so, you know, your amount of energy, though, I thought was bar none. You would just be like, and it's very inspiring because, for you to say I'm tired, I was just like, well, Jeff's like always got energy. He's just ready to go, but you had to go. You just had to. It was like, that was it. And you're like, and I don't know, maybe it's a little different now, but it would always be like, what's happening next month? Well, I have this next year and a half, like this is what is the schedule. And just going through and like I have it, this month I have a day to breathe here, and then there's just this month. So it was this wild schedule that I don't think many people can handle that. And I also don't think, and this is why it's just not for everybody, right? Because it's a very unique situation where you're creating your own schedules. If you are doing that, which you were, I find that you were more motivated to do this on your own, to create these things, to put this time, this is what I'm doing here, whether it's maybe writing grants, whether it's booking the show, it's like, touring. So you really had this all in place, lining these pieces up, which I now realize the extraordinary large amount of work that was.
That was crazy. Like I remember with Pig Iron, we'd have these big creative meetings with or company meetings, and basically we would just talk about schedule, and that's all it was. It was like this crazy matrix.
Yeah.
And then those years we were touring Pig Iron, but then Trey and I were touring All We're Bowlers, and then we were trying to make other stuff. And how all of that came to be, and like I have no idea, but it was like Jenga.
Yeah.
And it's funny, Brad, because I'm thinking about all that. That does seem like a world away.
Yeah.
But now I have 2 kids, and it's exhausting, and it's in this other way, and it feels like you're traveling all over the world, even though you haven't left the living room, where it's just like, and all of the highs and lows and the tantrums, and then like just the peaks and valleys are so intense.
Yeah.
And we're not getting enough sleep. And Sophie she says to me sometimes, like, I don't know how you do, like, you seem to still have energy. And like, you're actually playing with your daughter, like with Louise, you're not just like pretending. And I was like, yeah, that's funny. So I think I'm good at either faking it or
tapping into something.
Or tapping into something. I'm not sure.
Tapping into some kind of I feel like.
If you're into it,
earlier today I played nap. I played nap with my daughter. I'm gonna just lie here while she has all these like fish things out, and let's go fishing. We're pretending like we're on the boat. I'm like, the captain just has to take a little cat nap.
That's so great.
Going to Meowsymar. So you're doing like, you are tapping into that, and it is something that's available. It sounds like.
Yeah. I guess that's available. Like, definitely the things that I learned in the theater are really helpful as a parent. Which
like
is
what? What's one of those things? Just for people that are like,
how to throw something against the wall and make it smash into a million pieces. No,
like a dirty diaper.
Like a dirty diaper. Well, I think.
Don't go into the West Wing.
Don't go there.
Actually, the South Wing, I guess, would be.
No, none wings. None wings. How to make something out of nothing, like how to, like a lot of improvising and playing, like all you got is what's in front of you. You have to make that work with literally like one arm. Because one's holding a kid. How to like, it's like playful, like keep a playful spirit. And also how to like express your frustration before you throw someone through a plate glass window who's a quarter of your size.
Yes.
Because it's what do they say? Like parenting's not for babies, or whatever. Growing up's not for babies.
Yeah.
And I think it's not so much. I wouldn't say like time management, because I'm the worst time manager person. I always have been. So like even though you were saying like when you were talking about that schedule that was so bricked in, that is probably because I'm so bad at time management. Like I never managed to take a day off or whatever it was and breathe. But I can at least operate in a situation like that. And I feel like this is a constant barrage situation where it's just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So I think all of that's good. And I don't know. And Sophie, she's a theater artist as well. And so I think we're used to collaborating, we're used to being in the shit.
Yeah. Well, this is, you're in the shit.
Literally. Yeah.
this brings up a point here when you said, it's like just learning how to play, and ding, 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 right? Like that is it. That's what it's all about. And I know when I feel like I'm thriving and I feel like that I am really finding joy in my life and my heart is through play. And so for you to say, like, okay, where was this well coming from? You created these, and what you do in your art and in your theater is to make play happen, right? I mean, it's about play. So can you talk about that? Like just talking about what play means to you, and because there's people that don't get to experience that. It's like they go when they're little and then it cuts off, right? Some people continue it on in different ways and they can find that. But like, what is that? Would you say this is at the heart of it?
Okay. Yeah. Yes, definitely. I also say like, I wish I was much more articulate about this. And as you were talking,
you can just do like clicks and pops and grunts and moans to explain it.
Woo! Bing, bing, bing.
We don't say interesting, Geoff. Wow, when you put it that way.
Well, I don't know. I mean, what is it, right? Like, we know that every animal plays, and what does that even mean? It's like a kind of improvisational goofing, like that. Okay, I met a dog yesterday, for real. I never met this dog before. And the dog, it was like at an outdoor. It was McGruff, and he had a case to solve. He took a bite out of that crap. No, we were. It was like a little there's like a little brewery near me that's just opened up for like masked. I was like, okay, let's try it. It's super nice out, and like, what is it like? And there's not that many people around. And it was like, I think like the dog, the dog that just like hangs out at the bar. Really sweet dog. And the dog, because I had seen this like what I thought was a plastic plate. And I was like, oh, it's a Frisbee for the dog. And so we start playing Frisbee.
Yeah.
And it's pretty amazing, that game, because somebody once said that to me, like, it's like the oldest, it's like the oldest game. It's like the primordial game of catch that like, and he was playing catch with his dog, and he's like, we've been doing this forever. Like some dog and some person have been doing this, some variation of this forever. And it's hard to say who's playing who. Like, it's hard to say who's initiating the game and who's, like, on one hand, you're like, wherever I throw it, he's going to go and get it. He'll just go. But the dog is like, if I just keep bringing it back, he's going to throw it. And he's right. Like, that's what happens. And, and it's pretty amazing. Like the dog, we do not speak the same language. Dog brings a little Frisbee to me, like drops it. I pick it up, I throw it, dog. And there's like variations. Like sometimes I go to get it and he like pulls away. And I think it's really funny because it's like, well, how are we going to play if you don't give it to me? But that is part of the game. That's part of the play. And like little kids chasing each other. Nobody taught them
how to do that. Nobody like sat them down and were like, okay, so in this game, you're A and you're B, and you're going to like run after. No, don't let that person get you, but also at some point, you're going to have to let yourself be gotten. Nobody teaches us how to play chase, but we know that people love being chased and they love chasing. Yeah. But if the dynamic is always the same, if I'm always chasing you and you don't ever chase me, it gets boring. And then eventually we kind of like the friendship only goes so far. It's like you never really get past the first date. But if it can go back and forth, that sort of playful tide, it keeps happening, that kind of thing. So I don't know how to define it. Like what's happening in those kids? Like what's happening when we're like chasing each other around? I don't know, but it's like this endorphin rush. There's like a chemical thing that is like, we're communicating, but it's outside language. Mm-hmm. And it's exciting. It feels like anything can happen. It's totally in the moment. It feels like falling.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is, but I know that it's, if that's not there in the artwork, then there's really like not it for me. There's something like essential that is not there. Like I don't really have a whole lot of time for something that doesn't have that, because it's not to say it's not intellectual. There can be intellectual play, like it can be goofy intellectual, like but something that is just heady and without this sort of touching, without this back and forth like a kind of reciprocal thing, I think it's energetic, if it doesn't have that, it feels a little lousy.
Yeah.
Then you're kind of just a viewer. Mm-hmm. And what you're watching is a self-contained thing that doesn't need you. Yes. And you can appreciate it for its beauty, I suppose, but it's like you might as well not be there. A book is the most interactive form. Like the book needs the reader needs the words. I don't know where I was headed with that.
Yeah.
just that there's something about that back and forth that feels really important, and it feels really human.
Yeah.
And then also in the making of these things, I think there is something about just, it's like, I've often thought this, it's like you have the plan, you go in with the plan, you got the play in your head, what it's going to look like. You have to let that go though. Mm-hmm. You have to shelf that, because there's something else that happens in the space. And you probably find this with music. You might, you write the song, but when the musicians come in and you start actually finding yourself in the flow, mm-hmm. and you're in the zone of making, well, there's a lot of things that are definitely, if you can catch them, they're definitely going to transcend what it was that you had written down, because now they're emerging in conversation, and they're emerging in this like
connectedness
connectedness that an audience can then tap into.
Yeah.
And it's always going to be more interesting.
Yeah. I love that. It's, there's a couple of things I thought of here is just the act two of improvisation, and I know there's a lot of different ways you can improv, but how that, I don't know who says that improv can save the world. And I think in a way that's really cool. It's a way to shake people loose of their preconceived notions and the polarization that's they're placing on things, and just allowing this free form. So if you're basing your work, which I know you are, off of that, and it's coming from that place, it's like this very primal kind of raw thing that I think people are so hungry for. Mm-hmm. And they need that, I mean, they want it, they want to have access to it, so if there's a way to get it even from going to like your show and having that and receiving it, and to also, you like I love doing is you're extremely interactive with your audience. right? Like it's every show I've seen, basically, you're out there in the audience. And so there's connection that's happening. There's a connection. People are feeling a part of something. And that is like, that's just gold, that's gold. And that sets it apart from these other things that are just the canned response, the like, yeah. And then I'm sure that those have a place, but I feel similar to you. Like I'd rather see something that's more engaging and more spontaneous and is stemming from this place of, I don't know what it'd be called, the well, the
font.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So play. Everybody needs to play. I think it's really important. And coming back around to kids definitely get you to do that if you let yourself. I think that's why it's also so tiring, because they are in that zone 24/7, and the amount of energy that it actually takes. I don't know what other people might say, but I feel like the energy it takes to maintain that for me it wears me out, but it's also a source of energy. So if I let myself and surrender to it, but then it's energizing. If I fight it and I'm like, well, I have my schedule and this, then that's when you get knocked down.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you just said there about the schedule, but I got to do this, that, and the other thing. I feel that too, of course. But I think that what happens to us as like adults, quote unquote, is that somebody somewhere along the way has told us that there's a time and a place. That there's there's a time and a place for like childish things, and there's a time you have to like put those childish things to the side, like Brother Chuck once said. And like kids don't need to put those to the side. Yeah. But you're like, but at some point I got to pay my taxes, or I have to respond to this email or do whatever. Yeah. But I think it's partly the thing is that when there's some anxiety that comes up between those two parts of us. And that can be exhausting. Is like you thinking, okay, I've done this long enough. Like, okay, I've been playing, Captain Jingle Watts, whatever, like on the deck of this bunk bed boat for like long enough. Like, I think I better do something like an adult now.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's like, when I've tried to teach this. And I that almost feels embarrassing because I don't feel like we've identified what this is, like what it is that we're even talking about. But there is a class that you can teach in the theater, in the rubric of theater, that is called play, or called jeu. The French word is like jeu. And it's connected to this like study of the clown, which is different than the circus clown, but is like a kind of raw, rough. It's an old theater tradition of exposing oneself. It's where the comedy comes from, but it is also this like bearing your soul kind of truthfulness. When somebody's clown comes forward, it's also like this kind of beautiful. It's beautiful and hilarious and human and all of these things all at once. And it's a mysterious thing for the performer to tap into, but immediately recognizable for the audience. If you laugh, they nailed it. If you don't laugh, they're still trying to find it.
Yeah.
And in trying to teach this, there's a fatigue that comes over the students fast.
Yeah.
And there is a kind of, it's almost like a muscle that is being flexed that actually needs to be like worked on and worked out. And so
when I would teach this course that was called the jeu or the play or whatever, I would think of it like, okay, the way I would even bring it to them is like, this is like you're going to the gym. It's basically like there's no point to what we're doing. Just like when you go to the gym, it's not like there's a point to it. You're just building muscle or building flexibility or building stamina. That's what we're doing here. You're not like finding material that you're going to like make some show out of. That can be a different class. And that's what improvisation is. This is improvisational, but it's not a class in improv. It's not a class in making stuff. This is just the gym of like an imaginative play gym, because we kind of, as adults, we don't go there. We're not like sitting for hours over our Legos. We're like stressed out, like trying to see if we're like, can color in between the lines correctly or make a buck.
Yeah.
And nobody's really paying for you to like goof around with a Wolfman mask. Unless you're me. So in this class, we would I would let these quote unquote improvisations go the whole time.
Yeah.
So I actually would never stop it. For like in a 90-minute class, I would never, the general feeling is like after about 10 minutes, you're like, okay, let's talk about that. How did that go? And but I wouldn't let that happen. We would just stay in it. Unless you kind of like really had to go out and you would build to this moment. But it was kind of like I remember John Coltrane. There's like a word about John Coltrane that John Coltrane didn't think of music in bars, but in sheets, I guess is the term, is that his like the time scale was just different. So he's like an improvisational passage is like much larger than somebody else's. I'm not a jazz scholar. I like John Coltrane a lot, but don't take these words to the bank. But I'm inspired by that idea of like playing with duration in a way. And so like, how long can we stay on this joke or stay on this mania and feel when that other voice comes in that says, hey, we should probably go do email now, or we should probably go and do something like, shouldn't we go and like talk about something political, or shouldn't we get at something adult, or shouldn't we hide these feelings now? It's like, well, let's just recognize that voice, keep breathing, and stay on the joke and like see what happens. And maybe it's not funny for a minute. Maybe you start crying. Like, who knows? Maybe it's a little like you feel you feel lousy. Maybe you feel really like a worthless adult for a minute. And then, what happens next? What's on the other side of that? I don't know. We'll see. But I think that comes from this. It's the same feeling of when you're trying to do pull-ups and you can get 3 and you can't get the 4th or whatever you are, wherever you are in your pull-up career. But it's like, that feeling of like, I can't get it, or I can't get it today. That's the same thing. It's like, it's the same feeling of like a muscle that needs to be worked. And if it doesn't, it atrophies a little bit. Yeah. But it's still there. I mean, it's always there. It just needs to kind of get life breathed into it a bit. And I think for the audience, it's that same feeling of like, if you haven't been out of the house and then you go on a brisk walk and you're like, oh my God, this feels great.
Yeah.
Same thing with the audience. It's like, by and large, adults don't really play. So if you spend 2 hours goofing with an audience in a way that is legible and is like fun and not insulting and whatever, they're going to hopefully leave there being like, this is great. Like, this feels great. Yeah. I feel great, because you were working that muscle with them. You're working that imaginative, playful muscle.
I don't know why I've never like clicked this, that people go to see a play.
And it's called a play.
Yeah, I just like, it's like so ridiculous that it just took me this long to.
Well, it's also really, if you think of it, it's very funny when people are very like super pretentious about it, and they're like, I've been to the play. I don't think that's how the play should go. You're like, what are you talking about?
So what do you think people, in your opinion, how can people access that in their day-to-day, right? So say you got, Joe Schmo.
That's such a good question.
Sorry to any Joe Schmo out there, but a Joe Schmo. Like,
Well-
what do they do?
Okay, I got an idea about that because I've been teaching a class about that kind of
At Bard?
at Bard. Well, and I'm sorry to bring it up, but we're in a global pandemic, so I'm teaching a class that's remote, so I'm teaching them all on Zoom. But
And the only reason I say he apologizes because I've been like, well, I'll try just to go into that to make it, give people a break for a little to just, but this is how it is.
break's over. Pandemic's back on. Go back inside. Put your mask on and stay apart from everybody. Go back on Zoom now. Quit breathing.
Get back on Zoom. Plug in right now.
But to teach, we gotta be on Zoom right now. And
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, I don't really mind it too much because it's sort of like I don't think it's, it's not forever, let's hope. But
Yeah.
so but what I was noticing, because I did this last term also, I thought in thinking of a course that would be that wouldn't just be like a sad translation of a thing, but actually like could be a thing in and of itself. I thought let's teach a course. I want to teach a course it's called Dance of the Banal. And the idea is that it's a dance class, but you'd kind of have to do it in your house because it's about like dancing with your furniture, like dancing, like what's the dance of making your bed? What's the dance of sitting up, standing up, sitting down, making tea? Like what's the dance of those things?
Yeah.
And so it's about your domestic life. And also the notion of that class is like a lot of the time we actually, even though we're on Zoom, I ask them to like look anywhere except the screen and just like listen to my voice or something like that. And they're like engaging with their room, but I'm kind of guiding them through something. But then they'll make these dances. And I guess I would say that and this is, I guess, about dance, and about movement, that actually you're up on your feet doing stuff all the time, even if it is like washing dishes or taking a shower or, whatever, making tea or something like that. Or, like dragging the bodies out to the compost bin, like whatever it is for you, like there's a place of play in there of dance and like putting on some music and doing the task to music.
Yeah.
Just that alone is really fun. And it actually turns something that's kind of drudgery into something that's kind of awesome. And to just like get into the thing, like I actually love washing dishes. I don't always, but I can allow myself to kind of like enjoy the sort of the what happens in those movements, and doing it to music is actually really helps. It's like a thing that we can do. And it's no pressure. It's not like you're doing that for an audience. Although it's very fun if you are living with somebody or other people, then do it for them. Dance for them.
Yeah. So that's a great
That's my answer.
I love it. That's something people can do. Like, when you're going from room to room, just like somersault your way there like a critter.
Yeah, there you go. Be like a critter.
Roll through the house to get from place to place.
That's it.
Just do like a barrel roll across the floor to get someone a drink of water.
or if you are living with somebody else, just show up to breakfast or a meal wearing their clothes. Or no pants.
I love it. Anyway,
no pants Wednesdays.
Yes, no pant Wednesday. Wacky Wednesday. Have a wacky Wednesday on us.
Use a hairbrush as a toothbrush. Just fun things.
It's a good way though. I think what you're saying, get the mundane can become the super mundane. You can take these things, and why just waste the golden opportunity when we're just going through the motions, when it could be something possibly bigger and grander, and just more involved and connected. I like the connected thing. So then circling back to this side of, you bring this into your shows that you've done. I've seen this with a lot of your solo work, right? So for people that have seen, I know with you and Trey, the, All Wear Bowlers. Let's just go through some of these shows just to like hit them, right? All Wear Bowlers, Amnesia Curioso. This was with this Flesh and Blood and Fish and Fowl. This was with Charlotte.
Yeah. Well, you're good.
The Elephant Room. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
You, Trey, and Steve Schiffo, Trey Lyford. And that, I mean, what a mega blast of a party, these shows are, right? So you have these amazing shows. Then you start going off and kind of having the shows like The Object Lesson.
Yeah.
Yes. And most recently, Home.
Yeah.
Tell me about all of those in real time. Tell me every single thing that happened for each of those shows. A minute by minute replay of every single thing that happened during the whole course of.
Perfect. It was a Thursday, and it was really hot.
You have this is quite a canon, I'd say, though, because these are massive. These are big. I'd say big productions. I mean, for what you're doing and keeping it fresh. And anyone that can possibly ever go see you do these shows, please do. Okay,
Thanks,
please
man.
go see them. And but you bring this into all the work that you create, and I think that is very special. So I'm just wondering, like, how does it feel doing that and then keeping it fresh? Where it's stemming from this place of freshness, and you want to breathe life into it each time you perform
That's such a good question because, well, for one, I will say these shows are actually kind of complicated, and that one of the things that keeps it fresh for me is that it's just the like sheer hope that everything goes right. and it never does.
Yeah.
Like, something's bound to break.
There's a lot of X factors in these shows.
I mean, you didn't bring up machines, which is a show about that, really, where all of these machines that are made out of trash, there's just like strings everywhere. Like they're bound to fail. Like nothing, it's impossible for everything to go right. And the failure of the machines, even though they were made in order to succeed, they're like these Rube Goldberg style contraptions to make like your breakfast with a billiard ball rolling down a thing to hit a thing, to hit that kind of thing. We know they'll fail, and so it's about how are you going to deal with the failure. You just never quite sure when the failure is going to come and how. That's a kind of metaphor in a way, because that's partly what keeps it fresh, is that like something somewhere somehow is going to go wrong. Mm-hmm. That's just the entropy is the law of the universe. It will happen. So how do you deal with it? Then there is a moment though in these shows sometimes where actually it kind of irons itself out. And even though entropy is always a factor, you almost, and I know this is going to bite me in the ass at some point, but it's almost like you have explored every which way, like every permutation of failure. And so you're sort of prepared. Plus, the failure is no longer that funny anymore. And you're a little like, oh, come on, man. Like, really? Like that again? It's like just annoying. And so that there does come a moment where you're like, oh, how do you keep this alive? And on top of it, there's audience, and some audiences just are more fun than other audiences. Like, I hate to say it, but it's true. Like, I'd like to say, oh, no audience is the same and every audience is fresh and everything. Sure. That's true. That's true to some degree. And then sometimes it just doesn't, it's like the date gets off to a rocky start, and it's just it's not quite gelling. That is also a true thing. It's like that you have to say. I have to admit that certainly happens. So what do you do like in those moments? I don't know. I just I don't have like great wisdom. I just that like it's not so dissimilar from like dancing with your laundry or something like that. When it all goes belly up, you just breathe in that moment and enjoy this new fiasco. And and it is what it is. Like sometimes it even takes you out of the actual show. Like I will tell you, in this show Home that you brought up, in this show, it is a complicated show and there's a lot of illusion. And the early part of the show, in the very first part, after about 8 minutes or so, I am alone on an empty stage, but I am now joined by a musician and by this other person. And a few little things have happened that are pretty cool. And then a house basically appears on stage, like a 2-story skeletal structure that is like a wood frame house. It appears. And it was opening night. This is like one of those stories, it was like the dream venue, the dream gig. They had commissioned the piece in New York City at the Brooklyn Academy of Music. The Harvey Theater is like the space that I always dreamt of going. I'm like looking out there. I see the person who commissioned the show, seeing all these friends. I see all this, and the first 8-10 minutes, I'm telling you, this show, it was so great. Everything was going like clockwork. And then the moment that this house appears on stage, it doesn't appear on stage. And that moment happens. And, in my back of my head somewhere, I was like, well, that day could come. There could be a moment where that thing and I don't want to reveal how the magic tricks work, so I can't say too much. I will just say that there was something that I could hear that I know the audience couldn't hear that led me to understand that thing was not going to appear in that moment, and it wasn't going to appear maybe ever. Like that was not a thing that was going to happen. And I'm looking, and my buddy, my high school pal, is like playing the music. He's on stage. I look to my left, and there's like my other pal. And I have to say, I was like, I gotta go. Like I should run off the stage. But then I was like, I can't do that. Like the only reason they're here is because I convinced them that this was a good idea. And I convinced everybody that this was a good idea, that this would work. And this has not worked. This is clearly not working. And then I realized that I have engineered this moment to be, I'm in my underwear. Like that is what I'm wearing on stage. I'm in my underwear and I'm wearing a clear plastic sheet. And like a piece of like a tarp. And I was like, that was a great joke when the house would appear. When the house doesn't appear, I'm the asshole that's just like standing on this stage, like in their boxers, like with like, and that's it. Like, that's it. I got nothing. Yeah. I got nothing. And and there's a little bit of vamping. And like a few breaths go by, the audience is like in anticipation, as if it's like this is a great moment of tension, anticipation. But like there is a moment where we cannot be in that moment forever. But we stretched that out for a long time. And then I just said it. I just said, this is now the moment where I think I have to admit to you, like I am standing on this incredible stage where so many people have been, like many greater theater artists than I will ever be have graced this stage. And I'm standing before you in my underwear, dressed in a plastic sheet, and nothing is happening. And people laughed, Yeah. And I just started talking. I mean, like, I honestly don't really remember what I said, but I think I guided them on a sort of like guided meditation and asked them to think back on their childhood home and like the first place they would ever call home. Like, what was that space? Yeah. And took them down that journey. And luckily the sound designer was like playing along, and it was fucking terrifying. Like it was the worst, but also kind of great. And then eventually sounds happened that made me realize, okay, things were going to continue.
Yeah.
Because I had nothing, like that was the one, I don't know where I pulled that out of. I pulled that out of somewhere in my boxer shorts. And then the next move, I don't know what the next move was going to be. Yeah. I think the next move was thank you, good night. But it worked. And actually later, people remarked, like had no idea that wasn't a part of the show. That is not really, I guess, an answer to the question of like, how do you keep it fresh every night? But I guess that's just to say that like stuff goes wrong in a tremendous way. And I think it's just about trying to stay in some, like identifying like, well, what is really happening? Like if you just name it, it can't be that awful. I don't know. Maybe it is. I don't know.
I think I get what you're saying. That's what keeps it fresh, is the unknown that can happen each night. And I see that in your shows. You allow that to happen within the chaos and the madness that it does work, but knowing that it could always just like bifurcate and you're off and somewhere else and you have to like work with that, which is what keeps you on your toes.
Yeah.
You're more like kind of energized going through. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Oh my gosh. What about the future? What do you think is going to happen just for your show? Like, I know some things you're working on. I have seen the Dust from the Stars, which was kind of your first foray into I'd say multimedia experience. Would you
like a Zoom show?
It's called. Well, I didn't want to just brand it that way, but yeah, it's a Zoom show. Like, what do you think, or what do you have in store? What is the?
Yeah. Well, that one actually was super fun to work on, and really fun to make. And I think it was nice to like meet the moment and the medium, like with I think that was great. And in this like pandemic moment, I also made a sonic thing about Times Square.
Yeah, tell me about this. What is?
And that's actually up for a little while, so I could give that a little plug. It was through Beth Morrison Projects, and it's called Times Cubed, because it's about Times Squared. But so the full title, I guess, is because Times Cubed is times, like 3 times multiplied by themselves. Anyway, whatever. That's that show. But what I did is that I worked with this composer whose name is Pamela Z, and I interviewed like 12 people, and then each one for about an hour. And it was centered about Times Squared. But like one of them, for instance, is a cartographer, like a guy who mapped Manhattan when it was still Mannahatta. Like in this moment, he tried to map the island of Manhattan from 400 years ago, like what it would have looked like 400 years ago, which is a tremendous thing to have done. So I got to talk to him about trying to imagine the flora and fauna and because the idea is that this thing you can listen to it any time. It's not time based, but ideally you have downloaded it or whatever, you can stream it in Times Square. You can also listen to it in your own living room, and especially if you know Times Square, even if you don't know Times Square, but it was made in a way that would work both ways. But ideally, if you're in Times Square and you're listening to it, like this guy's describing to you what would have been around you 400 years ago. And that's a really interesting thing to be like, looking towards the Hudson River, and then he's talking to you about these streams that literally is like Broadway was a stream and stuff like that.
Wow.
And the incredible quiet that it would have been will never be now, or won't be for some time. Then I also talked to a guy who has done all this work about what will happen when humans are no longer in the picture. Like he imagines a world, like if humans went extinct, just magically to right now, what the first day looks like, what the next day looks like, what 7 days out, what a month out, how long it takes for buildings to fall, like when no one's there to refill, no one's there to exactly like what happens to the tunnels. And that's an incredible that he has. It's an incredible thing for him to hear. And then we talked to architects, and we talked to historians, and we talked to poets, and talked to like a lot of different people. And then basically what Pamela did is cut up their voices and their words into these tiny chunks and made a composition out of this like 12 hours. So it's comes in about 30, 35 minutes. It's a really like, it's not a long listen, but it's really cool. It's like what she was, and then it was a bit of a conversation between the two of us. But she's really the composer, she's the musician, and so that was a kind of collaboration that I worked on that I'm really excited about, because that's not a thing that I would have ever dreamt up on my own, or not in this moment. So we did that. I'm working on a larger project about food that is tentatively titled Food. But I don't know. I think that'll probably be coming like into theaters in like not this coming fall, but maybe like at the earliest the next fall, or maybe the fall after that. So 22 or 23. Like this past year has sort of put that project on ice for the minute, because I really want that to be alive in a show that is happening in the room. And we just don't know when and how that's all going to play out yet. Like, I think people are pretty positive about it, but I'll wait. I'm kind of waiting to see.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Especially if you're
sharing food. I know. I mean, it's pretty crazy when I think back on like the stuff we were doing right up until when stuff got closed down, where, I mean, it's just germ city. Like there's no way any show I've worked on is a super spreader event by like definition, for sure. For sure. Like we were doing home right up until everything shut down.
Before everyone had to go home.
Everyone had to go home forever. Come out and see home, or just stay home forever.
That's exciting, and I'll link to that. So check out the links for the sound project, Time Cubed.
Yeah, thanks.
And I hope the food show. I remember you said you'd be coming out here to see something.
We may come out to Tucson. That's
great.
right. That's right. Yeah, we're hoping that'll happen.
I do too. So just a couple closing questions here that are diverging, but I've been liking to ask folks is, what was your favorite, or is your favorite toy?
Whoa. God, that's it. I mean, so many answers to that question.
Yeah. There can be a lot. There can be
I mean, I'm just kind of going through because I'm just like so many years of Lego and how like what a incredible company or thing or whatever that is.
Yeah.
But it's pretty amazing. Like we got, with Louise, who's about, she's too young for Legos right now, but she's like a year and a half, just past that, like 20 months.
Yeah.
And it's just funny because it's that thing of like, you give a kid the toy, but they just want the box.
Yeah.
But what's amazing about her is that
like she's not been like that into toys. She just wants to play with what you've got.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're like opening it with a screwdriver, like a box or something like that, she wants the screwdriver. Like she wants to open stuff with the screwdriver.
Yeah.
And so that's been really fun, is like watching her goof with things like an electric toothbrush, or like just play with just like real stuff. Like I'm telling you, she spends a lot of time with just like rice and lentils on the ground with some like measuring cups.
Yeah.
So that's, I don't know, that's also pretty great. But
yeah.
I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what to say, because also, like I've spent my life playing with things like decks of cards, and you know, I've always had things in my hand, like some strange object of some kind.
Yeah.
But now I'm coming at a loss for like what really is like my favorite toy.
Legos is a good placeholder. I think that's all right.
All right, let's put it
Good
there.
answer, Legos. Something might pop, and we can always.
I'm just gonna say dirt.
Dirt. Yeah, there you go. There you go. There you go.
I said, there you go. That's pretty good, Jeff. That's a really good intro, though.
Oh man, my Zoom must have slowed down for a sec. So other question. Favorite movie of all time?
Oh, okay. Again, lots of answers to this one.
Mm-hmm.
But you know,
you're allowed to give a few. I'm not a.
Okay. If I can give a few. Did you ever see that film Being There?
Yeah. Yes. You're the one that turned me on to that. I watched that because of you.
That's just a fantastic film.
Yes.
So Being There's got to be in there.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, did you ever see that film With Nail and I?
No.
All right. Well, you got to see With Nail and I.
Okay.
What is his name? Richard E. Grant. And I can't remember the name of the filmmaker off the top of my head. It's so good. But it's basically like these two really sad out of work actors at like a 1970s or 60s London flat, like this deplorable flat. And they're just like super interested, but but they're so funny. They're so funny, and they're just trying to survive. But it takes on this like existential proportion, but it's a very funny movie, and it's so good. Those films come to mind. Mm-hmm. And then, I kind of got raised on like Chaplin and Keaton and all of that stuff.
I'm glad you're actually bringing that up, because it's a question that I wish I had asked earlier on, is what's your biggest influences? And I kind of wanted to make sure people know that Chaplin and Keaton were.
Yeah. And Jacques Tati. Like they're kind of like the silent film. I mean, Tati's not really silent film, but it's sort of in that same world of like physical comedy. And, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's like such a good example of the play thing, and I guess kind of the kind of clowning I'm talking about, but also, they're technical pioneers, like they're pioneering filmmaking techniques as they're make a gag work.
Yeah.
And that's pretty thrilling. Like that's pretty awesome and exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. They were like cutting edge and innovative at the time.
Yeah.
Well, check those out. I'm going to check out that movie. And this has been absolute fun. The absolute value of fun. Is there any closing words or that you have?
I no, I mean closing words.
Parting words of wisdom.
Each and every one of you. What's that behind you? Turn around. The call is coming from inside the house.
Try to shake up your reality today, people. Try
Check
to
it
do
out.
a little something to make yourself a little uncomfortable, and it might prove to be fun.
Brad, I just want to thank you for inviting me into this
Yeah,
space and having this conversation. It's always a huge pleasure
Yeah, thank you.
to be in your area of radiation.
Yeah. Yes.
So thank you, and I hope we can get together in person really soon.
I think that can happen. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think we'll make that happen. It's a joy. It's a pleasure. And I'm so happy to see you. And until we meet again.
thanks, Brad. I'll talk to you soon.
You will talk to me soon, sooner than you think, Geoff, if that is your real name. Man, what a trickster. What a funny guy. We left the show, and it turned out it was someone else pretending to be Geoff the entire episode. And they had one of those Mission Impossible peel-away masks. I can't even tell you who it was. But man, they really know about Geoff. He's so much fun. And, there's a lot we didn't talk about, obviously. There's not enough time. I really liked how we went into some of these other alleyways and avenues and lanes down memory. It's not just memory lane, you have these other streets too you got to pay attention to. If you don't, you're going to come up with something that'll surprise you and knock you for a little loop-de-loop. I'm going to throw on a link in the show notes as well to the Hollow Earth music video we did together. And that was a lot of fun. It was really fast. We made that in a couple days in Tucson over 10 years ago, way long ago. And that was a lot of fun. And I think it still stands the test of time. Yes. It was a lot of fun talking about the power of play and even some ways you can incorporate that and integrate that into your daily life. I'm going to just encourage you to do that and find ways that you can bring that in. Try something new. Try to challenge your monkey mind to get goofy. Become a goof. Become spontaneous. Untethered. I wonder what that would do. I wonder how that would feel. See what happens. Try it out. Go into the forbidden zone and see what you find there. You might surprise yourself and enjoy letting loose. I'm going to try that. I'm going to try to challenge myself. I sure need it. I mean, when you start to get too rigid and by the books with everything you're doing in life, just turning back to a kid, childlike wonder of playing and bringing joy. I think that's been a big theme recently, and I want to continue on that. Is just how much joy can you bring into your heart and how much joy can you experience and fill yourself up with. Sure seems like it's important right now in this day and age. So go on out there and be your best self. All right. Be well.
Your wishes come true.